Creator, may your spirit and guidance be in us as we work for the benefit of all our people, for peace and justice in our land, and for the constant recognition of the dignity and aspirations of those whom we serve. Amen.
Good morning, members. Every year on the last Friday in October, the Poppy campaign kicks off to raise funds to support veterans and their families across Canada. Today at 10:30 a.m. marks the pinning of the first Poppy ceremony at the Joint Task Force North in Yellowknife. Pages will be handing out poppies to members at that time, and I invite you all to wear them. The poppy is a symbol of remembrance to commemorate and honor fallen veterans as we approach Veterans Week. I want to acknowledge that November 8th marks Indigenous Veterans Day, and Remembrance Day is on November 11th. While exact numbers are unknown, it has been estimated that as many as 12,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people served in the great conflicts of the 20th century, with at least 500 of them sadly losing their lives. Indigenous veterans played a vital role within the Canadian military. Thank you, members. Minister statements. Minister for Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Government of Northwest Territories stands with the Government of Canada and provincial and territorial governments against harassment, abuse, unethical behavior in sport. By being a signatory to the 2019 Red Deer Declaration for the Prevention of Harassment, Abuse, and Discrimination in Sport, we committed to do our part to ensure safe sport environment for all participants in the Northwest Territories. Canadian athletes and the sports sector have called on all governments to make action to address safety concerns in organized sports in Canada. Ministers responsible for sports answered that call with the Red Deer Declaration and have been leading efforts to develop and advance safe sport in Canada. Today, I want to provide an update on the process the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs have made through collaboration with representatives of the Northwest Territory sports community. In August, I attended a conference of federal, provincial, and territorial ministers responsible for sport, physical activity, and recreation. This gathering took place in Niagara Falls, Ontario, just prior to the Canada Summer Games. During this meeting, all ministers agreed to establish policies and procedures to protect athletes and to prevent harassment, abuse, and discrimination. This involved expediting a mandatory third-party independent process, including establishing procedures for the reporting and management of allegations for all funded sports organizations starting in 2023. Also, we will continue to work with the sports sector and athletes to implement training and education on anti-harassment and abuse. Madam Speaker, since the Red Deer Declaration was endorsed, the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs have completed an environmental scan of current safe sport practices in the Northwest Territories. In November 2020, the Department held a Safe Sport Summit with stakeholders and partners and have since facilitated several information sessions with sport organizations. There is now an N.W.T. Safe Sport Framework, and a Safe Sport Implementation Plan is currently being finalized. The N.W.T. Safe Sport Framework provides opportunities for territorial and sport organizations, or major sport organizations, to adopt a series of safe sport policies that will address several areas, including code of conduct, discipline and complaints, dispute resolution, athlete protection, volunteer screening, and risk management. We know that requiring a strong policy base is only the beginning. The Department intends to work closely with organizations to facilitate open discussions and understanding of the Safe Sport Framework and include mandatory training requirements within the N.W.T. sport system. Madam Speaker, having an independent, confidential mechanism to report incidents of harassment, abuse, and discrimination is an important element of safe sport. Most provincial and territorial governments are either establishing their own third-party investigation service or are negotiating with the Sport Dispute Resolution Centre of Canada to provide those services within their jurisdictions. The department is actively researching options that are best for the territories, Northwest Territories. In addition to safe sport policies, the department will require sport organizations to adopt a concussion awareness policy and a return to play protocols. This process will require a collaborative approach with our sport partners as we work towards the goal of implementing these initiatives by the end of 2023. Madam Speaker, Municipal and Community Affairs is committed to fostering a safe and inclusive sport environment. We will continue to work with N.W.T sport organizations and our jurisdictional counterparts to make this a priority for our sport community in 2023 and beyond. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister statements. Minister statements. Member statements. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the federal government has the National Disaster Mitigation Program, which provides communities access to financial support for risk assessment, flood mapping, mitigation planning, and investments in non-structural and small-scale structural mitigation projects. Municipal and local governments, public sector bodies, private sector bodies, Indigenous governments, and non-governmental organizations can make applications to this program. Madam Speaker, apart from raising the road along Riverview Drive, little appears to have been determined on what mitigation measures, if any, will be in place to prepare the community for spring breakup. Residents who reside in the West Channel, Old Town, Corridor, and Paradise Valley are concerned and are asking what mitigation efforts and solutions have been identified for the area they live in. They are looking for answers and some form of communication from both the town of Hay River and this government. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the flood damage to Paradise Valley was extensive. The only access road was compromised, requiring a temporary one to be constructed. The embankment between the access road and river had trees and grass removed, which further degraded the stability of an already unstable bank. This, along with drainage, needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, the corridor itself was not spared from flooding and will require some form of berm between the river and homes. The downtown core and Cranberry Crescent areas will also require some form of berm for flood protection. The West Channel area situated along the lake requires repairs to the berm between the airport and the residential area. In addition, there's an issue with a watercourse known as the Oxbow, which allows water to flow inland from the lake during high water. A floodgate should be installed as a preventive measure. The Old Town itself has minimal in the way of flood protection. Consideration should be given to raising the perimeter road to serve as a berm, along with restoration of the harbor and channel. Madam Speaker, I will expect this government to work with the town of Hay River and Indigenous governments to identify and access funds under the National Disaster Mitigation Program to address solutions. Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to conclude my statement.
Thank you. The member for Hay River South is seeking unanimous consent to conclude his statement. Are there any nays? There are no nays. You may conclude your statement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for the benefit of Hay River and Acknowledgements residents and businesses, there will be a meeting on harbor restoration and harbor flood mitigation with the Minister of Infrastructure tomorrow from 11 to 2 at the Soaring Eagle Friendship Center. Please attend if you can. Thank you.
Member statements. Member for N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Lack of housing in Politic. I've spoken in the House before, simply not enough houses in the N.W.T riding. My constituents live in the farthest north of and the residents in the territory, and yet some families, Madam Speaker, live in cabins or makeshift tents. Madam Speaker, a young family in my riding in Politic who have been waiting for the Minister to deliver on a commitment on our last visit to get them into a housing unit. The Minister of Housing visited the N.W.T riding over the summer of 2020. At the time, the Minister met the young couple that had been taken off the wait list. At the time, the couple was receiving CERB payments at the Housing Corporation considered the income too high. I want to recognize that the minister did fix the problem where the Housing Corporation was counting CERB payment as income. But the minister assured the couple 2 years ago that they would prioritize and be putting on the wait list. Madam Speaker, it's October 28, 2022. Snow is falling, the ice is starting to form. It's formed already. The temperature is -14 and blowing snow. Madam Speaker, the couple is still living in a tent or a makeshift cabin since 2022. It's time where they have a baby, and they're raising that baby with no bathroom, no proper facilities for cleanliness. They've raised this newborn in the community of the Arctic Ocean while they wait for the Minister of Housing to allocate a housing unit to them. Madam Speaker, there's no private market housing in the community of Paultuck. No options for housing for residents in the housing units are filled. The government surveys show 311 people in Paultuck with 90 homes. Madam Speaker, we should be giving out all the extra, like the old Weber units, and giving them to the people of Paultuck, and then being able to put new units in through CMHC. Madam Speaker, how many people in Paultuck are on the waiting list for homes? How many people are homeless? We need the Minister of Housing to work with our community leadership and the people on the ground to show solutions today. It's 2022. Our people are living in the high Arctic, raising their children in tents, Madam Speaker. I'll have questions for the Minister at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Member statements. Member for Decho.
Merci, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, within the mandate to increase employment in small communities, the N.W.T states it will support small communities in developing skilled tradespeople. Madam Speaker, that is the best action this government can do to improve the lives of the residents in the small communities. Just for identifying and stating this objective, this government gets an A grade. Now let's do more in this area to get the A+ rating. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, when I previously brought up a training program for all settlement maintainers in our small communities, I was met with opposition to the idea. Specifically, I suggested training in the area of maintaining heating equipment, such as furnaces and boilers, and other required training to do the jobs required of them, all with the intent on saving time and much-needed dollars for the department in the long run. This will save infrastructure thousands of dollars flying or driving someone into a small community from a large center, and most likely, as has been known, only to bleed a furnace. Currently, Housing N.W.T is setting up a training program for their housing maintainers. They will do training in all aspects of maintaining a building, repairing components of the building, and basic understanding of the heating systems, whether they be a furnace or boiler system. That is exciting, and I am overjoyed for our housing employees in the small communities. I really, really, really want to be excited for the infrastructure department too. Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, members. The last I remember, I identify as she, her. So, Madam Speaker, adjust your speaking notes accordingly. Thank you. Member statements. Member for Tabacha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to begin today, I would like to respond to the answers the Minister of Housing, N.W.T, gave me during the question period yesterday. Overall, the Minister did not give me actual answers to my questions. She told me that her department is examining the constituent housing files I referenced in my statement yesterday. She said there are many complex issues within my constituent situations, and that Housing N.W.T needs to be fair in their treatment to all clients. The Minister said she needed more time to get the facts straight. Well, Madam Speaker, it's easy for any of us here in this building to say we need more time. to accrue the relevant information. However, some of the people whom we were put here to serve don't have the luxury of time. Plus, there are so many challenges and barriers for ordinary people obtaining assistance with government programs and services here in the N.W.T. Sometimes I feel as an elected official in this House, there are a couple on the executive side who use every excuse in the book to say no. Madam Speaker, it is very frustrating to see a lack of compassion given towards the people, the suffering of people. I strongly feel that everything that is done by this government should be based on need, not means tested. We are such a small population base. Everybody knows everybody. So we ought to be helping our constituents however we can, whenever we can. On another note, Mr. Speaker, to end this session week, I'd like to recognize and thank all the leadership and constituents of N.W.T for their continued support in my work as their MLA. I thank them for all their feedback, ideas, and trust they have given me as their MLA. I'd also like to thank all the chiefs who called that do not belong to my riding and approached me this week to say hi or hello. I also appreciate remaining connected to my old colleagues and friends as a member of this House. Seek unanimous consent to finish my statement, please.
The member for N.W.T, consent to conclude your statement. Are there any nays? There are no nays. You may conclude your statement.
In addition, Madam Speaker, I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank Speaker Blake for making this chamber lighthearted and fun at times as we go along. That type of attitude is much needed in this building sometimes, since we work through some tough, heavy, and challenging issues. I would also like to thank all the staff of the Assembly for their help through this term. I would also like to thank my CA, Pascal, for all his work and support that he gives to me. Lastly, Madam Speaker, I want to wish all my constituents, along with all the people of the N.W.T, a safe and happy Halloween. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member statements. Member for Frame Lake.
Madam President, one of the bills passed during the legislative avalanche ending the last assembly was a completely new version of the so-called Environmental Rights Act, the first time this legislation had been reviewed in 29 years. The Standing Committee of the Day worked very hard to improve the bill with 14 successful amendments. One of the new features of this little-used legislation was supposed to be a statement of environmental values. The N.W.T is the second jurisdiction in Canada to develop such a statement. This means that N.W.T is supposed to consider the principles and provisions set out in the statement when making decisions that may have a significant impact on the environment. Those principles include the precautionary principle, polluter pays, ecological sustainability, intergenerational equity, and Indigenous rights. The problem with the bill was that there was no way to define what might be meant by significant impact on the environment, and no responsibility for implementation and reporting. I tried to bring forward reasonable amendments both at committee and committee of the whole to address these problems, but they were defeated. Unfortunately, Cabinet did not address the same concerns again when they were brought forward during the review of the draft Statement of Environmental Values that took place earlier this year, or in the apparent approval of a final Statement of Environmental Values on June 7, 2022. Recently, I asked officials with 3 departments, Executive and Indigenous Affairs, Finance, and Environment and Natural Resources, what is meant by significant impact on the environment and who has responsibility for implementation and reporting. And guess what? No one knows. The way the statement has been crafted, it is totally discretionary, with deputy ministers responsible for its application in setting government priorities, development of policy and legislation, and design and delivery of programs and services. There's absolutely nothing about use of the statement or principles in cabinet decision-making, reporting, or evaluation. You can't even find a signed and dated version of the Statement of Environmental Values on any N.W.T website. What a disappointment and a clear indication that this cabinet is not prepared to change anything with regard to its business as usual approach to the environment. I'll have questions later today for the Premier, who according to the statement is, quote, accountable to the Executive Council and the residents of the N.W.T for implementation of the statement. Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member statements. Member for Cam Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, over the last few years, nurses have shared the impact of unsupportive work environments and critical staffing shortages on their morale and incentive to continue working in the North. And when our healthcare workers suffer, our residents suffer. Residents experience a decline in healthcare, long wait lists, and reduced program availability, which all have direct negative impacts on the health and well-being of residents. This is felt especially by those people who live in remote and small communities who already receive inequitable health care. Madam Speaker, our existing loyal healthcare staff are honest about what they need for retention, and this includes the appropriate complement of staff to reduce overtime burnout, ensuring safe work environments, and prioritizing work-life balance by making job sharing and annual leave possible. Achieving this relies on people. Last week, I asked the Minister of Health and Social Services to trade nursing education for return of service. This recruitment tactic, in the wake of global financial strain, secures a minimum of 8 years of residency from Southern nursing students, increasing our number of nursing graduates, and has a 100% rate of return on government investment. I was very happy to hear that the department is extending nursing bursaries to Indigenous and Northern students, but this does not go far enough. We have long-time residents interested in nursing careers who would not be considered Northern students. I am asking the department to extend nursing bursaries to non-priority students for any remaining spots in the Aurora College nursing program. We have 30 spots in the nursing program and an established bursary program that already has a priority level on it. So why isn't the goal of the department to ensure that the program is fully subscribed every year? Our current healthcare system is crumbling by design. We cannot be neutral and safe with our ideas to address this. Our system needs intentional, sustainable, long-term planning and funding. And all of this starts with people. We need to prioritize public health. We need to listen to and respond to what healthcare staff are asking for. And we need to fully commit to training new healthcare staff by ensuring Aurora College programs are fully subscribed. The key to strengthening our northern healthcare system starts with listening to our existing healthcare professionals and incentivizing healthcare education. My suggestion, Madam Speaker, accomplishes both. Thank you.
Thank you. Member statements. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Supplementary Health Benefits Program will create a publicly funded supplemental health benefits program for low-income residents. This program replaces the current specified disease condition criteria with a needs-based, income-tested model where changes will be phased in over time while leaving senior benefits as is. The creation of a new program is to include essential dental services and treatment, medical supplies, equipment such as hearing aids and walkers, and prescription eyewear. Access to the program will be income-based and residents must apply annually. Madam Speaker, the proposed low-income thresholds are too low, particularly for individuals living alone, which is already more expensive. A working individual making $40,000 annually, living alone and paying $20,000 in rent is not going to be able to cover big items. Residents are assessed against household income, according to their CRA income statements. Given the housing shortage, many people are forced to live together in one place, often in multi-generational situations. This is not out of choice, but out of need. If they all work and the overall household income is high, they will be on the hook for paying more of their medical needs. How do we avoid penalizing those who can't get or pay for housing and are now not eligible for benefits due to the higher overall household income? All household members must provide their Canada Revenue Agency income statement with the new proposed cost-sharing model deductibles. For low to moderate income, it would be a contribution of 30% of the cost. Why not 20% or even 25%? Again, the $53,000 for the individual or base income is too low. These are residents living paycheck to paycheck, already on the fiscal edge, the working poor. I applaud the inclusion in the proposed supplementary health benefits to provide financial assistance to offset costs for essential dental services. Preventative restorative treatments to maintain good oral health will be covered. That includes exams, x-rays, cleaning, fluoride treatment, extractions, treating infection, pain, or gum disease, and dentures. This is a positive step forward, and we need to ensure that we are being realistic on who we allow to qualify for them. It's time that we stop crippling residents with an unrealistic cost of living and show them that their health is important to us. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member statements. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Minister of Education, Culture and Employment informed this House last session that work to change the name of Great Slave Lake was well underway, as well as I'm expecting that same minister to hopefully table some changes to the Official Languages Act, which will stop using the term North and South Slavey. But I do think probably the easiest change we could make to stop using what history have gone over and many agree is a colonial name, it would be to change the name of the North and South Slave region. This actually could be done overnight. It does not require legislative changes. These are just administrative names we use for our regions. I think also in doing that, there would be some justification for creating a new region for the Cleacho region. I think often their concerns get kind of lost in the capital and the North Slave, and perhaps it would justify some new superintendent positions being placed in their communities. I'll have questions for the Premier about whether we can make this change and finally stop using the term slave. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member statements. Member for Nahende.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Florence Gomo Hardesty was born on August 25, 1943 to George and Lucy McPherson in Fort Simpson. Florence was one of 14 children they had. She grew up with her parents and family until she attended school. Florence attended the federal school in Fort Simpson, then she went to Grolier Hall in Nunavik, and then carried on to Sir John Franklin High School in Yellowknife. After she left school, she returned home. Florence met her love of her life, Ernest, in Fort Simpson, where they started their own family. They were married on December 31st, 1966, 6 days after their son Noel was born. They had 9 children. In the 1970s, they moved to Jean Marie River, and this is where they raised all their children. Florence was a homemaker most of her life, where she provided so much love to her husband, children, and their home. They managed Sumbakay Fall Campground for multiple years. This is where they met friends with many people from across the world. As well, she did work at Louis Norwegian School as a janitor for 7 years. Florence was known as Gomo in Jean Marie. Yvonne and Douglas's children started calling her Gomo, meaning mom, and the nickname stuck with her. All the children in Jean Marie loved being around her. She loved all the children as they were her own. Her heart was pure gold, and this was shown by her presence she showed when she was around others. Madam Speaker, Florence would often pick berries, spruce gum, and wood with her late mother-in-law, Sarah and Yvonne. Sarah would always teach them about traditional ways and practices. Florence used to sew dollies and took great pride in them. Florence developed dementia in late 2012, and in 2013 she started requiring more care that her husband could provide for her in their home. For the past 9 years, she was cared for in the Fort Simpson Elders Home Care. The family is forever grateful for the staff, their care, love provided to their mother, wife, grandmother, sister, auntie, and friend. Florence always told her families, friends, and those around her that she loved them. She continued to do this to the day where it became very hard for her to talk. The family asked that you continue this with your loved ones as well. The family would like to thank everybody for their kind words, support, and comfort during this difficult time. Madam Speaker, she'll be sadly missed.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the family. Member statements. Member statements. Returns to oral questions. Returns to oral questions. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member for Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to be joined today by a page from Yellowknife Centre, Sophie Shen. I'd like to welcome her to the House. Thank you.
Welcome. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member for Nahende.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to recognize Mary Jane Kazon, one of our translators here. She does an amazing job, and I thank her for continuing this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member for Range Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm really pleased to have a page from Range Lake here today. Miss Bethany Fenwick, so glad to have them in the House. We couldn't do our work without you.
Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to recognize Ms. Kaya Wicken, the Yellowknife North page. Thank you.
Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, apparently I jumped the gun when I recognized my page the other day. She wasn't here. So I would like to recognize Karis Lyell, who is a page from Great Slave Riding. And as I said, I really enjoy having the pages here and thank them all. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member for Sawtooth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to recognize the North Slavey interpreters. With me here today is Teresa Echinelli and Sarah Cleary. Thank you so much for your work in translating our work so the residents of the Sawtooth can hear what's going on in the proceedings in the House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Oh, member for Montfouille.
Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, I would like to recognize Jonas Lafferty of Bichaco and Mero Sundberg of DEDA for doing an awesome job as our translator. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Acknowledgements. Acknowledgements. Oral questions. Member for Nunukput.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we did a tour 2 years ago, and with the ministers committed in a public meeting that we'd be working with the family to get them into a house. And to this date, I guess we could blame COVID, I guess, in not getting it done. Madam Speaker, will the minister commit today in putting a couple in Polituk who are living in a tent with a baby in a home before Halloween? I guess it said Christmas, but I want it ASAP. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Minister for N.W.T. Housing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for his question. And I really sympathize with the member as well, too, and also with the LHO and our function in the smaller communities as well. Right now, I don't know what units we do have available in the smaller community, in the community of Polituk. I'm sure that the member was referencing, and it is a priority of this portfolio to be housing people that are most in need, and I will follow up with the member, but unfortunately right now I don't have the amount of units that are available in Polituk. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Nunukput.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I spoke to the Mayor this morning. There's one unit available in Polituk for that, and it's ready to be moved in. So I'm just wondering if it's and this couple's first on a waiting list, I'm told. So I'm wondering if the minister could see if the LHO in the community is available to put them into the unit ASAP or as soon as possible, because it's really in need. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Minister for Housing N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will follow up with the member. I'm not familiar with the unit that is available and the condition that the unit may be in and why the unit may be vacant. But just for the just to acknowledge the member as well too for the community of Polituk, they will be receiving 4 units in 23-24. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Nunukput.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with the current situation we have in Polituk with lack of housing, would the minister be willing to work with the community in regards to, with our community leadership, which coming down next week to meet with them to hear their concerns and what's happening with the local housing authority in the community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Housing, N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I will follow up with the community leadership as well. And I just also wanted to acknowledge that Paulatuck was one of our first communities to complete our community housing plans. And housing did work very closely with the community and also funded that program as well too. But yes, I would like to follow up with the leadership as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Final supplementary, member for Nunukput.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the Minister commit on doing a community tour of Nunukput with me to hear the concerns of the people in Nunukput on shortage of housing and the situations that we're all dealing with and different problems with the different communities? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister for Housing, N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just looking at our schedules that we do have in the next few months, that I would like to follow up with the member to look at the availability as well too. But not only that, I would like to connect with the Indigenous governments in the members' riding as well too, to get a further update on how and what progress has been made in regards to putting housing on the ground, and give them a further update on the partnership that we've been successfully working towards. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions, member for Decho.
Let's see, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm very passionate about training people in the small communities regarding the heating systems, as we don't have tradespeople within the communities, and most times they're quite a distance away. My member's statement alluded to training for all small community settlement maintainers, especially in the area of maintaining and performing basic servicing on furnaces and boilers. These will still be performed under the direction of a journeyman heating technician or operating engineer who could be stationed in the larger center. Can the minister commit to ensure our small community settlement maintainers get the required training to perform basic servicing functions to heating systems? Merci.
Thank you, member. Is this for Housing, N.W.T? Or who? Is it Minister of Infrastructure?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Department of Infrastructure currently has 13 settlement maintainer positions, and I'm just like the member to know that of the 13, 100% are Indigenous. So that's very, very good news for the positions. These employees are critical to functioning our assets in remote communities. The settlement maintainers, they do have a preventive maintenance, and they complete daily checks on our schools, our health centers, and our office buildings. They also respond to concerns and problems with heating systems, air handling units, washrooms, windows, and more. So, Madam Speaker, they do have the training to be able to do these positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Decho.
Merci, Madam Speaker, and merci to the Minister for describing their functions. What is happening is that they don't have any training program for settlement maintainers, as the housing maintainers had a program before. They did the carpentry, the plumbing, the basic electrical, plus you sat in front of a furnace and boiler system for about 6 weeks till you really understood and could wire the systems. That's what I'm after, is that type of training. These are much needed in our small communities to add value to the positions. And like I says, we don't have any ticketed heating specialists in our communities. So once these people are in that training program and understand the heating system, we got Aurora College, which is empty all the time for this kind of a program. We need to better utilize that, because we're doing it for the housing maintainers, and that's why I'm pushing for the settlement maintainers to get the much needed training. And I don't know why the infrastructure department does not understand that. I wonder if the minister can comment on that, Masi.
Thank you. Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we understand that. You know, all of our settlement maintainers have a journey person certificate in one of the building or mechanical trades and certification as a small system operator. You know, these are required to have training and knowledge in the National Building Code, plumbing, electrical, and fire code. So they do have the training. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary member for Decho.
That was only two. Merci, Madam Speaker. I think I've only asked two questions. Madam Speaker, I hear what the minister is saying. I just don't understand why she's saying they have the required training. And I know that they don't have the required training to be able to perform basic servicing functions that they would have got from training in the Aurora College oil heat technician seminars that they have every spring. They have them for third-year plumbers, plus they're open to housing maintainers, and they should be open to settlement maintainers to attend this training so they better understand what they're dealing with, because right now they don't. I'm wondering if the minister can commit to providing that training this coming spring. Merci.
Thank you. Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, employees are able to request additional training from their supervisor at any time, and we encourage supervisors to support that when the operational requirements allow. Madam Speaker, we also support settlement maintainers that want to further their education, including programs that are offered through the Aurora College. We also offer mentorship with our journey person staff in the regional centers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary member for Decho.
Merci, Madam Speaker. I hear the minister, but I think the answers are coming from her staff or from within the department. Because I'd really implore this minister to seriously commit to providing the training that I've been requesting to all settlement maintainers up and down the valley. And many are in isolated communities where we don't have the specialists. And those are the people that are much needed in our communities that can help others too. And I really implore that she provides that training, and starting in the spring coming up, to send the maintainers to the heating systems training that's on for 6 weeks every spring at the Aurora College to utilize the building, utilize the services. Merci.
Thank you. Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Department of Infrastructure supports the development of all its employees. Employees are supported through many N.W.T programs, including the Indigenous Management Development and Training Program. We also support them in any training that they request. At this time, we do not have plans for a settlement and maintainer program within the Department of Infrastructure, but I will have my staff reach out to the Department Housing N.W.T to be able to learn more about this program the member is speaking about and see what opportunity may exist. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my questions are for the Minister of Health and Social Services. Can the Minister explain how the thresholds in the proposed supplementary health benefits were arrived at and what data was used to inform them? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister for Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the question. The data was arrived at using income figures supplied by the N.W.T Bureau of Statistics. The target group for this initiative is people who don't have any insurance of any kind. So the examples were geared towards a lower income threshold. However, there is now a tool on the site which people can enter their income into, and they will find out what level of copay they will be required, if any. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm glad to hear about the tool. I think that's really useful, and people can answer their own questions before they come to ask. I guess my question would be that data provided by the N.W.T. Bureau of Statistics, how old is that data? I'm curious because we've really seen over the last year or two, post-pandemic, an escalating rise in the cost of living. So I'm wondering if the last 2 years that change has been factored into these thresholds. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't have that information with me.
Thank you. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm hoping that the Minister will provide me with that information, and I'll take that as a commitment. Can the Minister explain how the situation of multi-generational living arrangements are going to be taken into account? Often, we've seen in the past where a grandmother is helping out children and they come to live with her, and then she is penalized for having that additional income in the house, even though there is no overall rise to the amount of money she has herself. Can the Minister speak to that? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the intention is to look at individual income at this point, but what I want to stress is that this is not a program at this point. It's a discussion. We have provided 4 months worth of public consultation, and that now extends until November the 23rd. There are many ways to participate, including a town hall that will take place in mid-November with more information to come. So if people feel that there should be a different way of calculating income, that it should be household income or some other form, then certainly that input is welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Final supplementary, member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm glad to hear that there is still time to input on this. I guess at times, though, in this era of over-consultation and survey burnout, it is tough sometimes for the public to realize that they still can input on things, and other times when things are inputted on, the government just does what they want anyway. So not a question, just more of a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, member for Great Slave. Oral questions. Member for Montfouille.
This is to Minister of Health and Social Services. According to the Office of the Auditor General report, the Department of Health and Social Services does not do enough to provide residents with accessible, coordinated, and culturally safe addiction services. It is unclear from the department's work plan how it intends to address the situation in a meaningful way. Will the minister commit to working with Indigenous government to develop a process of consultation and engagement with communities and Indigenous governments outside its Indigenous Advisory Board? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have not yet heard back from the Standing Committee on the Office of the Auditor General's report on the on addictions and aftercare treatment. So that report has not yet been tabled, but I will say, of course, we have accepted all the recommendations. The committee is considering a work plan attached to that. It does not, to the best of my knowledge, anticipate that we are going to disband the Indigenous Advisory Council, which now works with NTHSSA, or that we would replace them with Indigenous governments. If I understand the question correctly, we are not planning restructuring. We're planning program responses. Thank you.
Thank you. Oral questions. Member for Montfouille.
Okay. What funding and process mechanism will be put in place to ensure community and client guidance translates into improvement and cultural safety? Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the cultural safety division of the department, which is called Community Culture and Innovation, has a mandate to help with all programs and services to ensure that they are culturally safe and anti-racist. So that would be in place in any initiatives that are put in place. At this point, the asks are, I'm going to say, primarily process-oriented, with a view to collecting better data so that we know, we have a better idea of what the outcomes are, and we're certainly committed to doing that work. We want to be able to show that what we're doing is working. Thank you.
Thank you. Supplementary member for Montfouet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker. How will addiction recovery aftercare supports and services being developed by the Department of Health and Social Services engage with and leverage community-based resources such as elders or youth? Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have not directly consulted elders on any of these initiatives. As I say, they're not really new program initiatives. They're important things, but not necessarily the kind of things we would consult on, like disaggregating data. So we have regular meetings with the Indigenous governments through bilateral conversations and also through the N.W.T Council of Leaders. There are elders sometimes there. Certainly the Indigenous governments come with questions for health and questions about addictions, and we do our best to work with them and meet them where they're at, knowing that community-based solutions are usually the best solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, member for Montfouet.
Will the Minister of Health and Social Services provide an update to explain her rationale for choosing not to restore contract relations with Palmacres Lodge despite the clear and immediate need for the facility-based addiction treatment services they provide N.W.T residents? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm not planning to provide any more information than I have already provided about the contract with Poundmakers Lodge. It ends at the end of this month. We have 5 other treatment options that residents can go to. There are 3 in Alberta, 1 in BC, and 1 in Ontario. As well as they can stay home and use the community counseling service, the community on the land programs, and so on. So while we are not going to continue with Poundmakers, we do have those other options. And recognizing that we don't have a specific Indigenous option equivalent to Poundmakers, we will be advertising for a service provider with a specialty in Indigenous healing, and that RFP is set to go out by the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. My questions are for the Premier. According to the Statement of Environmental Values, the Premier is, quote, accountable to the Executive Council and residents of the N.W.T for implementation of the Statement of Environmental Values. End of quote. So recently I had asked officials from 3 departments, Executive and Indigenous Affairs, Finance, and Environment and Natural Resources, who was responsible for implementation of the statement. And guess what, Madam Speaker? Nobody seems to know. So can the Premier clarify who is really in charge of implementation of the Statement of Environmental Values and how it is going to be accomplished? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Statement of Environmental Values states within it that it's the responsibility of each minister, and therefore I refer that to deputy ministers as well, to take reasonable measures to ensure that departments adhere to the statement and provisions of the Statement of Environmental Values when making decisions that significantly affect the environment. In addition, the Deputy Minister of ENR is responsible for monitoring and reviewing the statement and best practices to see if possible amendments are needed from time to time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary, member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I want to thank the Premier for reading off parts of the statement. You know, in my statement earlier today, I said that there does not appear to be a signed and dated copy of the final version of the Statement of Environmental Values anywhere on a N.W.T website. So can the Premier confirm that there is no publicly accessible final and signed version of the Statement of Environmental Values, and can she commit to fix this problem? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, online things are not my strength, but I have assured by the department that the final statement on the environmental values is posted online. Signed versions are not posted on the policy section of the website as a GNWT practice. However, the signed version is posted on the Legislative Assembly website as the document was tabled. I'm going to do my check on that this weekend, and I'm sure the member will let me know if it's not there. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary, member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I want to thank the Premier for that, and I can confirm there is a signed version on the Ledge website, but nowhere else on any GNWT website. And of course, our website is not a GNWT website, but there is a requirement in the Environmental Rights Act for an annual report to be tabled in the House, although we've slipped on that in the past. I tried to include a requirement for some type of reporting and implementation of the Statement of Environmental Values to the bill, but Cabinet opposed that. So can the Premier tell us whether there's going to be any sort of internal tracking of implementation of the statement and whether that will be shared with the public? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, the statement does set out the specific responsibilities for the Deputy Minister. ENR must coordinate the administration and implementation of the statement, monitor advancements in best practices, and periodically review with involvement of many departments and agencies. The Statement of the Environmental Values is only one of a suite of tools that the government uses to protect the environment. This is a new policy, Madam Speaker, and as previously mentioned to the member, we'll continue to work on its implementation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Final supplementary, member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I want to thank the Premier for confirming that there is no internal tracking and that there's no public reporting. There's absolutely nothing in the statement about how it is to be applied to Cabinet decision-making, tracking, reporting, or evaluation. That's a disappointment, Madam Speaker, and that Cabinet doesn't take this Statement of Environmental Values very seriously, in my view. But Cabinet now includes some sort of gender-based analysis and climate change implications in its decision-making. So can the Premier commit to include a section and analysis on the application of the Statement of Environmental Values in this government's Financial Management Board decision template? Merci, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not the Minister of Finance or the Chair of the Financial Management Board, but I can say what Cabinet does have when we look at things like legislative proposals. There is a section that addresses climate change, gender, as stated. What I can commit to is under the climate change for Cabinet that we will add the Statement of Environmental Values, so that's considered as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Oral questions. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My questions are for the Premier. I guess simply I'm wondering if there are any plans or intention to change the name of the administrative regions, North or South Slave. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We hadn't thought about changing the names. It's something that I have been hearing about lately in the House, however, but it is possible to change names. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Yellowknife North.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. I'm going to try this a different way. I know it's possible. That's why I'm asking. Will the Premier change the names? Thank you.
Just say yes.
Thank you, Member. Honourable Premier.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I thought I could get it over on the MLA, but I think he's quicker than I thought. What I can say is What I can say, Madam Speaker, is that in all seriousness, we're currently, EC is currently doing a review of the geological place names for the Great Slave Lake. I've talked to the Minister, and perhaps we can work together and actually see if there's interest during that work. And if there is interest, then we can pursue it. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Member for Yellowknife North.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wouldn't want, if the proposal to change Great Slave Lake goes through, I think it would be only appropriate that we then change the regions. It would be a little embarrassing, I think, for the N.W.T to just be holding on to that. But I've often heard that, you know, the North Slave region, which to me operates much more like a capital region, doesn't really give the outlying communities the attention it deserves. Certainly when you look at the staffing contingent, that is clear that it's very much centralized in Yellowknife. I've often heard it repeated by my colleague from Montfouille that the Clecho region, it justifies being separated out from North Slave with some superintendents placed there to give it the attention it deserves. I also think this just makes sense for, you know, an eventual building of self-government point of view. So I'm wondering, in doing this work, perhaps there is room to create a 6th administrative region in the Clecho. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Honourable Premier.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I think that during the process of the consultation, that should be looked at as well. I think, Madam Speaker, though, in honesty, it's a bigger discussion that we have to have at the Cabinet table. I do realize that different departments have different zones. Some have 5 regions, some have 7 regions, and I think there might be 9 regions in some. So I think it is a discussion that we have to have. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Oral questions? Oral questions? Member for Montfouille?
Okay. My question is to Minister of Health and Social Services. What funding has been allocated to each of the commitments and activities to the work in the work plans? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the work plan hasn't yet been approved, so I don't have a budget for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Montfouille.
The minister talked about, okay, that they're not renewing the contract with the pawnmakers, and there's 5 other options. Why only 5? Shouldn't there be more if we're trying to help and work with the people? Because it is the people's choice of where they want to go. And pawnmakers was the only one that we can think of that has that served the indigenous communities. Now people don't have a choice. So I'm just wondering, is the minister consulting and working with the indigenous government, the indigenous people? She said there were some people at the meeting that she attended, but that's not good enough. Like, is she working? Because the OAG report states that. It says all over in the OAG report that to work with the indigenous government, consult with the indigenous government. And I'm just wondering, I don't think that is happening, but I just want to ask that, like, is she working with the indigenous government on this selecting? Like, who are part of the decision-making? Is it just the Department of Health and Social Services making the decisions? Are they working with the indigenous government? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, one of the things that we committed to in the response to the OAG recommendations is to engage with Indigenous governments to identify barriers to people attending addiction services and take a look at our standards and policies for contracts to make sure that they are culturally safe. So this is work that we plan to do in response to the OAG. But in the interim, I had a meeting with the N.W.T Council of Leaders, which included leadership from the members' region, to talk about addictions and aftercare. That happened at the end of September, and another meeting is planned for the end of November. And so I certainly am looking forward to continuing the conversation about how to strengthen our system. If the member has particular people she would like me to meet or talk to, I would welcome the opportunity if she would invite me to her community. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Minister. Member for Mafwee.
Yes, can the minister provide a list to us of how many people attended Southern Treatment Program for drugs and alcohol since 2019? Can she provide the list to us? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I can provide that information.
Final supplementary, member for Mafwee.
Okay. Well, I still have one more question for another minister, but can the minister, can she come with me on a constituent tour in Klitschko region? Can she come with me so she can meet and talk to the Indigenous government, to the people, to the elders, to the youth on the addiction and treatment program? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, there's a meeting arranged for the end of November with the Klitschko government and the Chief of Beshko, to which the member has been invited to talk about addictions and aftercare. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. In terms of a constituency tour, I will repeat again that if she invites me and organizes the constituency tour, I am happy to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Oral question, member for Hay River South.
Just bear with me here.
Technical difficulties. It's okay, it's your guys' time.
Madam Speaker, we have issues, people on the street have issues with, addictions and health issues. We also have people who are in isolation that have those similar issues. And what I see that would be beneficial for at least the community of Hay River, and because it's a regional center, is if we had access to medical social services people. And I would ask the minister if there are any such positions within the either the NTHSSA or the Hay River Health and Social Services Authority at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the question. NTHSSA offers adult services, which is social work services for people who are not children or youth, often people who are street involved. That position does not exist at the Hay River Health and Social Services Authority. Right now, I think there are some of the staff in the authority who are assisting people who need these services off the side of their desks, so not a proper medical social worker position. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the minister give me, a brief explanation of exactly what the duties would be, or what the responsibilities would be for a medical social worker? And she said that they were sort of being provided off the side of a desk, and has that been beneficial? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, some of the things that the medical social worker would do is to assist the person to get into housing, assist them to get into treatment, assist them to obtain income support, assist them to obtain referrals for medical care if such referrals are necessary, referrals to counseling, completing Jordan Principle applications, getting them set up with the proper ID, whether that's a birth certificate, a general identity card, or whether it is a driver's license. So this is a position that facilitates people's access to services that may be provided directly by that individual, but may also be provided by other service providers within the government. And so I think that the point here is that the person who is without services has a navigator to assist them to find services appropriate to their situation. Thank you.
Supplementary, member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the minister also confirm if the medical social workers would be required to have, clients just attend the health center or their offices where they're working at, or can would the person be able to go out and on the street and to where actually clients are and people who probably would normally attend to the hospital? Because I guess I just thinking about Hay River and the number of people on the street there, and some of the things that she did mention as probably things that we as MLAs already do in the community. So I just wondering if there's flexibility there. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a very important role, and I appreciate the member's efforts to do this work as well for his constituents. I don't see a reason that the medical social worker would not go and see people where they are, but I'm not familiar with their workflow, but it makes sense that it would be broader than just having people attend the health center or the building that flooded downtown in order to obtain services. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, would the minister to commit to finding the funding for the placement of 2 medical social workers with the Hay River Health and Social Services Authority? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Madam Speaker, I'm so relieved to be able to say yes. Yes. The Hay River Health and Social Services Authority is applying for 2 medical social worker positions for exactly the reasons that the member has outlined, that the demand and the severity of need in the street-involved population is such that these positions need to be created and staffed full-time. Thank you.
Thank you. Oral questions. Member for Montfouille.
Okay, thank you. This is a question for the Minister of Housing. My question to the Minister is whether she will consider taking the initiative in forgiving the mortgage arrears of the constituents who did not understand anything about mortgages and were not informed in their own language. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister for N.W.T. or Housing N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will take this back to the department as well, and I just want to remind the member as well too that we do have to follow the Financial Management Act as well too, and when we're going to be looking at writing off debts to this government, it is something that is actually brought forward to this Assembly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Oral question, member for Montfouille.
Yeah. Well, they are the Executive Council, and they can change the policy. It is within their policy. They have the authority to change the policy. So, in the past, FMB wrote off $4 million for business loan. So I know they can do it. They can change the policy. They have that is within their authority. But I just want to ask the minister: will the minister commit to transferring? Will commit to transferring North Slave District Office to Cleacho Region that deals specifically with Cleacho? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister for Housing and N.W.T.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this point, we don't see any transfers happening to the Clecho for our district office to be operating out of the Clecho region. Right now, they are considered out of the North Slave, but I can follow up with the member. We also do have our working table with the Clecho government as well too, and I haven't. This hasn't been highlighted at those tables that they had brought this up as a concern to the government. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, member from Offway.
Yes, well, I've been hearing from a lot of my constituents because sometimes when they have housing issues, they have nobody to go to. And that's what I keep hearing from the people. So when they do transfer the North Slave District Office and hiring more local people, then I think the program will be more effective and efficient because right now it's not working. It is not working in our region and everything is in Yellowknife. So that's all I want to say, and it's more of a comment, but it's up to her if she wants to respond to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Minister, Housing N.W.T.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The North Slave office does travel quite frequently into the members' riding as well, but I can bring this back to the department. But like I had said, is that it hasn't been brought up at the Indigenous government table, and it wasn't highlighted with our housing working group table as well too. But I can follow up with the member. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My questions are for the Minister of Finance responsible for the procurement review. When you look at Schedule 3 of the Business Incentive Policy, there's a number of Southern companies that have been grandfathered. I think it'd be fair to frame this list as a number of monopolies that we seem to be dedicated to building up. There are 3 versions of Northwest Tel, there's Belanca Developments, 3 versions of Northern Properties, all of which have been bought and sold many times, 3 versions of Northmart, and 13 specified Northern stores, some of which don't exist anymore, and most notoriously Walmart Canada. So my question for the minister responsible for this procurement review is, when are we going to remove this list of grandfathered Southern businesses from our business incentive policy? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the definition of a northern business is subject to the review. There have been a lot of inputs on that. I would note, I think it might well be the very same member who had previously suggested that the definition of a northern business should speak to the number of employees in the riding, and that might make it interesting to determine whether or not Walmart should be removed or not. But when we are complete the definition, which will happen in the life of this government, we will then be in a position to update the schedules according to BIP, because we'll be in a position to say, again, whether or not, sorry, Madam Speaker, or we'll be in a position to identify who should be on the list and who falls within the definition. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, member for Yellowknife North.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I recognize that, but what we've done is actually we've specified a list, and on it are a number of companies that don't exist anymore, a number of numbered companies. I have no idea what those numbered corporations are. It's really, I get there's a way to define the policy, and whether or not Walmart falls in it is up to, you know, probably the way we write the policy and the Business Incentive Review Committee. I don't understand why we are keeping this schedule of a list of companies, many of which are outdated, and many of which absolutely are not warranted to be BIP'd anymore. I think they have long since left any sort of employees in the North. So is the plan to get rid of this scheduled method where we list a number of corporations, some of which don't exist anymore? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, member. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I typed quickly, but not enough to pull up Schedule 3 in the space of time that the question was being posed. So it's not appropriate for me to be committing to what will or will not look like the final schedules when the final definition of a northern business is complete. What I can say, Madam Speaker, is I think there's a fairly reasonable possibility that there is an update to various company names and corporations, corporate documents, and that may be the explanation. That doesn't change the bigger picture of what is the definition of a northern business, how does BIP get applied to that definition, and to ensure that it's clear so that we don't wind up with multiple schedules that get year to year updated. That's not effective, and that's certainly, I take that point and I agree with that point. That's the direction we're going to, and the definition for northern business is being worked on right now. But once that's done, the schedules will align with that, or frankly maybe go away. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Oral questions. Member for Great Slave.
Madam Speaker, I would like to request unanimous consent to return to recognition of visitors in the gallery. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Great Slave is seeking unanimous consent to return to recognition of visitors in the gallery. Are there any nays? There are no nays.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. I would like to recognize the crew of 62 Degrees North, a medic company here in Yellowknife that was instrumental to helping us during the pandemic, including the production of hand sanitizer locally. So we have Matt Vincent, who is the president and CEO, and with him we have Cody Earl, Brian Johnson, Kim Bailey, Sebastian Rapid, and Alex Purcell. So welcome to the gallery. I hope you enjoyed it today. Thank you.
Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Written questions. Written questions. Returns to written questions. Returns to written questions. Replies to the Commissioner's address. Replies to the Commissioner's address. Petitions. Petitions. Reports of committees on the review of bills. Reports of committees on the review of bills. Reports of standing and special committees. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Your Standing Committee on Government Operations is pleased to provide its report on the review of the 2020-21 public accounts and commends it to the House. Introduction. Reviewing the public accounts to enhance financial accountability. On December 8, 2021, the Minister of Finance tabled the 2021 public accounts. The public accounts are the financial statements that show the financial results of the Government of the Northwest Territories for a given year. Each year, the Standing Committee on Government Operations reviews the public accounts. These reviews assess the credibility of the government's financial position and provide accountability for the government's financial results. Put differently, these reviews matter because they ask whether public money was spent prudently as intended by the Legislative Assembly. On June 29, 2022, committee held the public portion of its review. Committee received briefings from the officials at the Office of the Auditor General and the Office of the Comptroller General. Their input was valuable to identify and clarify key issues. In response, committee developed 8 substantive recommendations to improve financial practices and reporting. These recommendations seek to achieve 3 goals. 1. Understand and address NTHSA's growing deficit. 2. Enhance disclosure on environmental liabilities, resource revenues, and tangible capital assets. And 3. Make fiscal reporting more timely, frequent, comparable, and digital. Committee is pleased to submit these recommendations and looks forward to their implementation. Recommendations. Understand and address NTHSA's growing deficit. When NTHSA was established in 2016, its accumulated deficit stood at $51 million. Part of the promise of amalgamating the 6 regional health authorities was to control spending while improving care. NTHSA's creation was supposed to help use resources more effectively and improve accountability and risk management. Yet now, 6 years later, NTHSA's accumulated deficit has almost quadrupled. It stands now at $194 million, up by over $140 million. The accumulated deficit has climbed because expenses have exceeded revenues by $10 to $35 million in each of the last 6 years. NTHSA reports that the reason for operating deficit are numerous. 5 noticeable cost drivers include: 1. cost of overtime due to staffing shortages. 2, underfunded locum costs. 3, unfunded or underfunded programs. 4, unfunded growth in healthcare positions. And 5, underfunded COVID-19 costs. To understand and address these and other cost drivers, the G&W.T has pointed to a financial sustainability plan. The plan was finalized in December 2020. Shortly afterwards, the Minister of Health and Social Services said, "What we are trying to do is reduce the size of NTHS's deficit to zero through health system sustainability plan, to understand the drivers that are adding to the deficit and address those and reduce them, so we get to a point where we're not budgeting with deficits for the health authorities. It's unclear whether the financial sustainability plan is on track to reach its zero deficit goal. Early reporting suggested that the plan was delayed and staffing efforts faced difficulties. This work may have been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021-2022, the first full fiscal year after the plan was finalized, NTHSA's annual deficit reached an all-time high of $34 million. Other reporting in the HSS business plan document and the NTHSA annual report does not indicate whether any savings have been achieved. The Territory's medium-term fiscal outlook adds to our concern. The G&W.T's financial forecast says it will run out of room to borrow money within 4 years. In 2026-27, meanwhile, the health system faces relentless cost pressures, an aging population, and a need to keep up with technological innovation, all while maintaining service levels. Without reforms to achieve better value from existing health system services now, the G&W.T may be forced to reduce healthcare services in the future. The committee is concerned that the G&W.T's financial sustainability plan may not be sufficient to ensure the healthcare system's long-term or even medium-term financial sustainability. The OAG, the Office of the Auditor General, believes the recent changes to increase financial reporting capacity of the NTHSA are not enough on their own to address persistent deficits. The committee expects to see improved performance towards obtaining the healthcare system goals while respecting budget constraints. As the Minister previously said, this work starts with a better understanding of NTHSA's deficit. The committee therefore recommends, Recommendation 1, that the Department of Health and Social Services provide detailed reporting and analysis on each cost driver of the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority persistent operating deficit. The analysis should quantify how each driver contributes to NTHSA's operating deficit. The analysis should also quantify, break down, and explain for each driver the difference between 1, budget expenses, positions, and programs, and 2, actual results. The Office of the Auditor General also raised concerns about the internal controls at the NTHSA. Internal control distances around the site. Oh, apologies. I'm missing a page. Internal control processes are important to protect the public sector from fraud, corruption, waste, and abuse. Internal controls help government measure the value for money of services. The OAG reported that many areas of internal controls needed improvement and noted this problem is in a management letter to the authority. Better internal controls at the NTHSA are a key element to improving the performance and restoring financial sustainability. The committee wants to reinforce accountability for the OAG's recommendations and therefore recommends Recommendation 2, that the Department of Health and Social Services disclose its response to the Office of the Auditor General's 2020-2021 audit observation that many areas of internal controls need improvement at the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority. The department should also disclose its action items, progress on those action items, and timeline to improve internal controls.
I'm going to turn it over to...
One moment.
You're going to turn it over.
I will now turn it over to the MLA for Cam Lake. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member for Yellowknife North. Member for Cam Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Enhanced disclosure on environmental liabilities, resource revenues, and tangible capital assets. Environmental liabilities. Environmental liabilities represent the costs required to remediate contaminated sites for which the G&W.T is responsible. The 2020-2021 public accounts reported 277 contaminated sites with a total liability of $68 million. This liability is further broken down according to 7 types of sites, such as abandoned mines and landfills. For years, committee has advocated for more transparency on the G.N.W.T's contaminated sites. In 2018, committee recommended that the G.N.W.T develop an online inventory modeled on the federal government's Federal Contaminated Sites Inventory. The G.N.W.T accepted that recommendation and, in the past year, released the G.N.W.T Environmental Liabilities Dashboard. Committee commends the G.N.W.T for this work. The dashboard is a significant contribution toward more transparency on environmental liabilities. However, the G.N.W.T's dashboard is missing key categories of information of interest that are available on the federal inventory. Take, for example, the Giant Mine Remediation Project, which is co-managed by the G.N.W.T and the federal government. The G.N.W.T's dashboard plots the site on a map, identifies the site type and contaminant of concern, and provides a brief description. The federal inventory provides this information and much more, such as the volume of contaminated media, population estimates at distances around the site, and a breakdown of remediation spending for each year. Committee encourages the G.N.W.T to build on its environmental liabilities dashboard and provide more disclosure. Committee therefore recommends recommendation number 3, that the Department of Finance provide a plan with timelines to enhance reporting on the G.N.W.T environmental liabilities dashboard by matching reporting practices in the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat's Federal Contaminated Sites Inventory. Resource revenues. The public accounts reported that in 2020-2021, the G.N.W.T collected $66 million in gross non-renewable resource revenues. Non-renewable resource revenues include mineral, quarry, oil and gas, and water revenues as defined in the Northwest Territories Lands and Resources Devolution Agreement. The public accounts only break down the gross revenue amount into 3 broad categories: minerals, oil and gas royalties, licenses, rental, and other fees, and quarry fees. Committee wants to see a more detailed breakdown of each type of resource revenue and a clear presentation of gross revenues, disbursements to other governments, and the resulting net revenues for the G.N.W.T. Thorough reporting is important to maintain the credibility of resource revenue collection and distribution. While current reporting practices meet minimum standards in the Public Service Accounting Standards, the OAG indicated that there is room for enhanced disclosure in a note. Committee agrees and therefore recommends recommendation number 4, that the Department of Finance provide more detailed resource revenue data on gross amounts received and calculations of amounts retained. This enhanced reporting should separate annual aggregate values from petroleum, mineral resources, and each other type of resource revenues. Tangible capital assets. The public accounts reported that in 2020-2021, the net book value of the G.N.W.T's tangible capital assets, or TCAs, was $3.7 billion. Tangible capital assets are the buildings, roads, equipment, and other assets whose life extends beyond the fiscal year and are being used on an ongoing basis. Each asset is amortized over its estimated useful life. Some assets may be fully amortized even if they're still in use, making them assets with a 0 book value. Committee is not aware of reporting in the public accounts on assets with 0 book value. Information on accumulated amortization, which was $2.2 billion in 2020-2021, does not indicate how much of that amortization comes from fully amortized assets. Committee believes this type of reporting is important as an indicator of future asset replacement costs that are potentially imminent. Committee wants to see more reporting in this area and therefore recommends recommendation number 5, that the Comptroller General add to the financial statement discussion and analysis section of the public accounts information on tangible capital assets with 0 book value and provide a timeline for implementation. Make fiscal reporting more timely, frequent, comparable, and digital. For this review of the public accounts, committee took a special look at transparency in fiscal reporting. This kind of transparency refers to the comprehensiveness, clarity, reliability, timeliness, and relevance of reporting on public finances. Transparent fiscal reporting is important for effective fiscal management and accountability. It helps ensure members, businesses, and residents have information to hold government accountable. It provides government with accurate information to make better budget and policy decisions, and it strengthens the credibility of a jurisdiction's fiscal health to markets. In recent years, the N.W.T has made several changes to the public accounts more transparent. Significant changes include enhancing the financial statement discussion and analysis section and more detailed disclosure in the notes. Committee appreciates the Comptroller General's commitment to continually improve the public accounts and openness to committee recommendations. In support of continual improvement, Committee evaluated the N.W.T's fiscal transparency compared with international standards, specifically the IMF's Fiscal Transparency Code. The IMF, an international financial institution, calls the code the International Standard for Disclosure of Information about Public Finances. The code includes 12 dimensions of transparency in fiscal reporting. Committee found that the N.W.T met the highest advanced standard of transparency in 5 of the 12 dimensions. In the remaining dimensions, the N.W.T could improve its fiscal reporting practices to meet the highest international standards. Madam Speaker, I would like to please pass the reading of the report on to my colleague from Tabacha.
Thank you. Member for Tabacha.
Thank you. Figure number 2, Government of the Northwest Territories' performance on 12 international best practices of fiscal transparency. There are 3 categories: the dimension, the principle, and the rate of the government practices. Number 1, coverage of institutions. Fiscal reports cover all entities engaged in public activity according to international standards. We got an advance for that. Number 2, coverage of stocks. Fiscal reports include a balance sheet of public assets, liabilities, and net worth. Advanced. 3, coverage of flows. Fiscal reports cover all public revenue, expenditures, and financing. We got advance for that. 4, statistical integrity. Fiscal statistics are compiled and disseminated in accordance with international standards. Advanced. External audit. Annual financial statements are subject to published audit by an independent supreme audit institution which validates their reliability. Advanced. Number 6, timeless of annual financial reports. Audit or final annual financial reports are published in a timely manner. We got a good for that. Number 7, internal consistency. Fiscal reports are internally consistent and include reconciliations between alternative measures of summary fiscal aggregates. We got good for that. Classification. Fiscal reports classify information in ways that make clear the use of public resources and facilitate international comparisons. We got a basic for that. Comparability of fiscal data. Fiscal forecast budgets and fiscal reports are presented on a comparable basis with any diversions explained. Basic. Coverage of tax expenditures. The government regularly discloses and manages revenue loss from tax expenditures, less than basic. Frequency of in-year reporting. In-year fiscal reports are published on a frequent and regular basis, less than basic. Historical revisions. Major revisions to historical fiscal statistics are disclosed and explained. Unclear. Committee believes the Government of the Northwest Territories should and can meet the highest standards of transparency. To that effect, Committee is advancing recommendations to improve in 3 areas. 1, the timeliness of annual financial statements. 2, the frequency of in-year reporting. And 3, the comparability of fiscal data. Committee recognizes that our recommended improvements will take place. The improvements imply significant administrative, technological, policy, and even legislative work. The most significant challenge may be to develop the internal government collaboration needed to produce greater external transparency. With these factors in mind, committee is seeking the Government of the Northwest Territories' commitment to take steps with timelines towards reaching the highest standards of fiscal transparency. Timeliness of annual financial reports. Timeliness refers to the time lag between the end of the fiscal year, March 31st, and when the public accounts are published. Timely publication is critical to ensure that past fiscal performance can inform future budgets. It also ensures that any irregularities identified by auditors can be addressed quickly. Several international organizations, such as the IMF, recommend releasing the public accounts within 6 months of the fiscal year end. The Government of Northwest Territories does not meet this standard. Legislation only requires the Government of the Northwest Territories to complete the public accounts within the 9 months. Over the past 5 years, the Government of the Northwest Territories has released the public accounts 7 to 9 months after fiscal year end. Figure number 3, release date to the public accounts since 2017. The years for 2017 for the public account year, released month was November 2017, which was 8 months. For 2018, it was released on October 2018, which is 7 months. 2019, December 2019 was 9 months. 2020, December 2020 was 9 months. 2021 was released on November 2021, which was 8 months. While the Controller General is required to produce an internal financial report within 6 months of the fiscal year end, this practice falls short of the international best practice. The interim financial report is not non-consolidated, unaudited, and generally not available to the public. Committee believes a timelier release of the public accounts is achievable. Yukon's Department of Finance, for example, is working with the consolidated entities and the OAG to move up the release of the public accounts. Committee therefore recommends, recommendation number 6, that the Department of Finance amend the Financial Administration Act, Section 35, to move the required release date of the public accounts by 3 months from December 31st to September 30th. I will now turn the next item over to MLA Johnson from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Frequency of in-year reporting. Frequency of in-year reporting refers to publishing information on government revenues, spending, and debt financing over the course of the fiscal year and comparing these results with the budget. Frequent and regular in-year fiscal reports are important because they provide information on progress implementing the budget. This helps inform budget preparation for the next year. In-year reports also require government to create and enforce procedures to collect and consolidate data across public sector entities. The N.W.T does not appear to meet the basic level on this international standard, to publish in-year fiscal reports on a quarterly basis within a quarter. In fact, committee is not aware of any in-year fiscal reports that the N.W.T regularly releases to the public. Though the N.W.T released an in-year fiscal update in 2021, this practice is not routine. That document also did not offer data tables to compare the results with the actual budget. Other jurisdictions produce regular in-year fiscal reports. The federal government releases quarterly and monthly fiscal reports. Yukon releases a detailed, semi-annual interim fiscal and economic update. Committee wants to see more transparency on the N.W.T's in-year progress implementing the budget and therefore recommends, recommendation 7, that the Department of Finance take steps to publish in-year fiscal reports on a quarterly basis within a month and provide a timeline for implementation. Comparability of fiscal data. Comparability refers to how information is presented in the public accounts to make easy comparisons over time with other fiscal documents, like the budget. Comparable fiscal data matter because they enhance the integrity and transparency of government finances. A key aspect of comparability is the use of consistent classification in fiscal documents. There are 4 main internationally adopted classifications used for fiscal data. 1. Administrative, which identifies the department responsible for a financial item. 2. Economic, which identifies the type of spending, such as salaries or travel. 3. Functional, which identifies the socioeconomic objective of a financial item. And 4. Program, which consists of a set of activities to achieve a policy objective. The G&WT's budget and main estimates documents use, more or less, all 4 types of classification. By contrast, the public accounts use only 3 types, leaving out program classifications. The discrepancy makes it harder for users of the public accounts to scrutinize how well the G&WT implemented the budget. An additional barrier to fiscal comparability is publication format. To committee's knowledge, the only publication format for the budget of the public accounts is a PDF. Each PDF is limited to a single year's data, making it onerous and even prohibitive for users to manipulate the data and assess long-term trends beyond those included in the discussion and analysis section. Take, for example, a public accounts user trying to assess the G&WT spending on child and family and services over the past 10 years. The user would have to locate, open, and search 10 PDF documents. This task would be practical only on certain devices. While the user would find reference to spending at the Department of Health and Social Services and administrative data classification, they would not find information on how child and family services, a program classification. This example illustrates how the current publication format and data classification reduce the usefulness of the public accounts. Other jurisdictions provide examples of digital publication formats that make it easier to use the public accounts. Ontario provides a searchable web-based table of spending items broken down by program, as well as a CSV data files highlighting 5-year fiscal trends. Quebec displays web-based graphs of high-level fiscal aggregates with 10 years of historical data and links to the relevant page in the traditional public accounts. And Yukon's Department of Finance is implementing a recommendation from its public accounts to digitize public accounts. Committee wants to see changes to make information in the public accounts more comparable over time and with the budget, a user-friendly publication formats. Committee therefore recommends that the Department of Finance take steps to digitize the public accounts and provide a timeline for the implementation and anticipated costs. The digitized presentation of financial results should align with the administrative, economic, functional, and program classifications used in the budget and main estimate documents. Conclusion. This concludes the Standing Committee on Government Operations report on the review of the 2020-21 public accounts. Committee looks forward to the government's response to these recommendations. Recommendation 9, that the Standing Committee on Government Operations recommends that the government of the Northwest Territories provide a response to this report within 120 days. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Call him again. Member for Yellowknife North.
Madam Speaker, I move, second by the Honourable Member for Tabasha, that the Standing Committee on Government Operations report on the review of the 2020-21 public accounts be received by the Assembly and moved into Committee of the Whole for further consideration. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Yellowknife North. The motion is in order. The motion is non-debatable. All those in favour? All those opposed? Abstaining? Motion is carried. Committee report 36-19 brackets 2 is referred to Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Reports of standing and special committees. Reports of standing and special committees. Tabling of documents. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a number of documents for tabling. Please, the supplementary estimates, infrastructure expenditures number 2, 2022-2023, supplementary estimates operations expenditures number 2, 2022-2023, public accounts of the Government of the Northwest Territories for the year ended March 31st, 2022, interim non-consolidated financial statements, budget dialogues 2022, what we heard reports, recommendations, Northwest Territories liquor legislation review, public service annual report 2021-2022, and Northwest Territories Liquor and Cannabis Commission's 68th Annual Report. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Tabling of documents. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to table the following two documents. Northwest Territories Law Foundation 39th Annual Report for the period ending June 30, 2021, and Territorial Police Service Agreement, RCMP, Annual Report 2021-2022. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Tabling of documents. And Minister responsible for N.W.T. Power Corporation.
Madam Speaker, I wish to table the following document, Northwest Territories Power Corporation and Hydro Corporation Annual Report 2021-2022. Kuinaini, Madam Speaker.
Kuinaini. Or tabling of documents. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to table the following documents. Plain language summary for Bill 58, an act to amend the Legislative Assembly and Executive Council Act, and the plain language summary for Bill 59, an act to amend the Elections and Plebiscites Act. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Tabling of documents. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I wish to table the following two documents. A letter dated October 19th, 2022 from Deputy Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment to myself regarding an ATIP request. Secondly, disclosure package of 140 heavily redacted pages of options papers for regulations under the Mineral Resources Act. Merci, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Tabling of documents. Member for Montfouille.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to table a letter from the Deputy Minister of Finance dated March 11, 2021 to the President of Northwest Tel. Thank you.
Thank you. Tabling of documents. Tabling of documents. Notice of motion. Notice of motion. Motions. Motions. Notice of motion for the first reading of bills. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I give notice that on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022, I will present Bill 61, an act to amend the Ombudsman Act, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Notices of motion for the first reading of bills. Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I give notice that on Tuesday, November the 1st, 2022, I will present Bill 62, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, number 2, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Notices of motion for the first reading of bills. Minister of EC&E.
Madam Speaker, I give notice that on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022, I will present Bill 63, an act to amend the Official Languages Act, to be read for the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Notices of motion for the first reading of bills. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I give notice that on Tuesday, November 1st, 2022, I will present Bill 64, an act to amend the Legislative Assembly and Executive Council Act, number 3, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Notice of motion for the first reading of bills. Notices of motion for the first reading of bills. First reading of bills. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Consideration in Committee of the Whole of bills and other matters. Bill 23, Bill 29, Bill 58, Bill 59. Table document 723-19-2. Table document 747-19-2. Table document 748-19-2 with member for Decho in the chair.
I now call Committee of the Whole to order. What is the wish of committee? Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Committee wishes, I move that the chair rise and report progress.
Sorry. Committee, there's a motion on the floor to report progress. The motion is in order and non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. I will now rise and report progress. Merci. That's it.
May I have the report of Committee of the Whole? Member for Decho.
Madam Speaker, your committee has been considering Bill 23, 723-19 brackets 2, Bill 29, 747-19 brackets 2, Bill 58, 748-19 brackets 2, and Bill 59. I would like to report progress. And, Madam Speaker, I move that the report of the Committee of the Whole be concurred with. Merci.
Thank you, Member for Decho. Do I have a seconder? Member for Frame Lake. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. All right, so third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Orders of the day, Mr. Clerk.
Orders of the day for Monday, October 31st, 2022, 1:30 p.m. Prayer, minister statements, member statements, returns to oral questions, recognition of visitors in the gallery, acknowledgements, oral questions, returns to written questions, replies to commissioner's address, petitions, reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, tabling of documents, notices of motion, motions, motion 64-19-2, motion 65-19-2, motion 66-19-2, notices of motion for first reading of bills. First reading of bills, Bill 60. Second reading of bills, consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters, bills 23, 29, 58, and 59, table documents 723, 747, and 748-19-2. Third reading of bills, orders of the day.
This House stands adjourned until Monday, October 31st, 2022 at 1:30 p.m.